Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good Thursday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date on your latest forecast and the current weather conditions in your part of Alaska. You can do that anytime by listening to your NOAA weather radio, going to weather.gov/Alaska or arh.noaa.gov. Head to the weather info line at 1-800-472-0391. Find us on Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube all day long and between current editions of Alaska Weather. Now, if you'd like to go back and watch previous editions of Alaska Weather, you're certainly welcome to do that. But after this show, a little bit later in the evening, you'll find the entire broadcast online with our broadcast partner at alaskapublic.org and on YouTube simply by searching AKWX TV. If you'd like a shortened or very condensed version that you'll get a little bit earlier in the afternoon, simply go to NWS Anchorage and look for Alaska Weather daily briefings there. The fire danger continues across some of the interior and around some parts of the Copper River Basin, mainly north of South Central and Kenai Peninsula. There are a few hot spots a little bit across the northern Kenai and maybe in the southern side of the Anchorage Bowl, but by and large the focus for the drier weather and the dry fuels a little bit further north at this point. There's one area generally west of Glen Allen that seems to be a little bit closer to the extreme level for fire danger right now. But thanks to recent rains, conditions for fire danger have subsided or eased just a little bit. It's not gone, and the season's not over yet, but you can still see at least some reprieve from where we were just a few weeks ago. Here's a look at the Bering Sea satellite picture now, and I'd like you to key on a couple things. We've got a trail of moisture here that extends from the Gulf of Alaska all the way back into the central and northern Pacific and across eastern Asia. Another similar pattern shaping up here with low pressure east of Tokyo. And we've got colder air coming out of eastern parts of Siberia. And that is driving southward, working into the central and western part of the Bering. The moisture stream continues to work itself in from the west and southwest, and we've got that resetting of the pattern, it seems like, down here across the far western Pacific and eastern Asia. So plenty of clouds continue across southwestern Alaska with moisture streaming in, meeting up with colder air. It looks like the Bering Sea fog will continue, as well as widespread areas of showers, if not rain, across southwest Alaska and a large part of the Alaska Peninsula. And at times we're going to have some stronger northerly winds across the Bering Strait. As you'll see later in the forecast, at times that might reverse to more of a southerly course in between storms. The visible satellite picture shows quite a bit of cloud cover, really from just about all borders of Alaska, just covered up. A few areas across the interior were a little bit more on the clear side today, including places like Fairbanks that made it well into the 60s. As far as heat goes, though, it was Ketchikan and Annette and Hyder that saw temperatures at or even above 70 degrees today. Pretty warm stuff there. Another dry day for southeast. That's slowly coming to an end with this mass of moisture moving eastward across the Gulf. Around Kodiak, South Central, and the Alaska Peninsula, many areas we're looking at rainfall today. This is working itself northward, and by the end of tonight, many places in South Central, including the Anchorage Bowl and Hillside, as well as the Matanuska and Susitna valleys, will be dealing with more rain as we head into the overnight hours. Showers and thunderstorms were primarily located across the Yukon, but you'll gradually see a lot more cloud cover drifting north and west. So many of these storms here could be getting fairly close to the Alcan by later on tonight. There's a better chance for shower and thunderstorm activity across the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range tomorrow, as well as a few more places across the interior, with continued areas of rainfall across the YK, Norton Sound, maybe even up to Nome, as a wave of low pressure seen right about here around the Pribilofs continues to track eastward slowly. Here's a look at the surface weather map now, and low pressure is parked pretty much where it was in the Bering Sea yesterday, very close to the Pribilofs at 1,005 millibars. We're seeing a refocusing of stronger low pressure here just south of the Alaska Peninsula near Sand Point. This is going to work north and eastward and eventually cross over to the Gulf, and this is what's going to bring rainfall back into southeastern Alaska. Here's our thunderstorms across the Yukon. We've got a little bit of colder air up across the Arctic coast, and some snow is falling around places like Wainwright and close to Barrow earlier this afternoon. As we get into tonight, the colder air across eastern Siberia will drop southward rather than move eastward, so it will gradually affect the Aleutians first before the west coast. Low pressure is tightening up and starting to strengthen, going from over 1,000 millibars to 997 millibars just tonight as it moves toward Kodiak Island. An occluded front will set up mainly south of the Kenai Peninsula. You can see the ridge here still protecting southeastern Alaska and really a large part of the interior and eastern Alaska at this point. Don't be surprised to see some gales develop on the west and south side of the storm as it moves eastward. We'll also have a little bit more of a stronger low-level flow coming in from east to west across the northern Gulf. Some of those winds probably going over 30 to 35 knots at least by Friday afternoon. The rain will be a little bit more widespread as we go through Friday, and here comes your rain for southeast. Places like Sitka all the way up to Gustavus, probably into Juneau. We'll be dealing with wetter weather by the end of the week, and showers and thunderstorms may blossom as you head into the interior. The rainfall there a little bit more spotty in nature, but a better opportunity for some of those storms to grow, and some of that could be across areas in the upper Kuskokwim Valley as well. Looking to the west, our low pressure system across the western Bering isn't making a whole lot of progress one way or the other, but it is dropping southward ever so slightly. And with that comes a better chance for some stronger winds across the west central Aleutians and some rain and showers there, mainly on the north side of the system and west of St. Matthew, and areas of fog between the Gulf of Anadyr, St. Matthew, and Pribilov Island waters and down into the central chain. As we get into Saturday, a better chance for showers and storms across the interior and northward toward the Brooks Range. Again, not as much cloud cover the farther north you go, and a little bit better chance for a few showers there, but we'll also have an opportunity for some light rain across Norton Sound and the Seward Peninsula. A large part of the YK will probably start to see a little bit of a break in the precipitation. If it's not completely gone, it will be a lot more drizzly or showery in nature. The bulk of the more steady rainfall will shift a little bit further eastward as low pressure is moving closer and closer to southeastern Yakutat at 1,005 millibars, but at this point it's not as strong as it was on Friday. The frontal boundary is falling apart. You'll still have plenty of an onshore flow bringing more rain to your region, and showers and thunderstorms once again will primarily focus on British Columbia and Yukon, probably a little bit more in the interior as well, but maybe not as much as what we see tomorrow. Rain and fog still possible across the central and eastern chain. A cold front is slowly slicing through the central and western part of the Aleutians there, and you'll see more stable weather behind it, and the wind shouldn't be as much of an issue as they may be in the west on Friday, and even that doesn't look to be so bad. Watch for some gales perhaps on the western side of this, but again, this storm as well is starting to weaken from the strength that we see it on Friday. Recapping today's temperatures, Hyder, once again, a pretty warm day at 73 degrees. Places like Ketchikan and Annette were also in the upper 60s earlier this afternoon. 57 around Sitka, 66 in Juneau, mid-50s for Yakutat, a fairly mild day for southeast. For Prince William Sound, we saw temperatures in the lower to mid-50s. Palmer and Wasilla were much closer to the 60-degree mark. Kodiak was looking at 51. On the other end of the island, around Afognak, 48 degrees. Around Glen Allen, 61 degrees. Fairbanks looking at temperatures in the lower 60s. Northway and Eagle both in the lower 60s today. Fort Yukon saw 61. Anaktuvik Pass was 45 degrees. Fort Yukon, Arctic Village, I should say, at 52 degrees. And we saw that Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse also in the lower 50s, with Kaktovik not reporting this afternoon. Mid-30s for Barrow, Atkasuk, all the way down toward Wainwright, Point Hope, and Point Lay. Fairly cool temperatures compared to the rest of the state, but a little bit milder than yesterday in some ways. Kotzebue Sound saw temperatures in the 30s and 40s. Nome was just shy of 50 at 4 o'clock. St. Lawrence Island was in the upper 30s. The YK generally in the upper 40s and lower 50s. Unalakleet about 50 degrees. McGrath 56. Bethel showing 53, and Ammonik about 48. Areas around Bristol Bay a little bit closer to 50 degrees there. Cape Newenham about 44. The Pribilovs in the mid-40s. The Alaska Peninsula on the Bering side was a little bit milder than what we saw on the Pacific side. Sand Point and False Pass, we're looking at temperatures pretty close to 50 degrees today. Unalaska and Dutch Harbor around 50, and the central and western chain in the lower to mid-40s. Overnight low temperatures in the west, especially the west coast, will hover around 40 degrees. Once you get south of the Kuskokwim Bay area, you're likely in the lower 40s there for the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay. The Chain generally in the lower 40s. Kodiak 46. Southeast looking at temps in the mid-40s overnight. Prince William Sound in the mid-40s. For the interior, expect overnight lows in the low to mid-40s. Fairbanks about 46. Fort Yukon 44. Eagle 39. Nome about 40 degrees. And the Arctic coast in the lower 30s. High temperatures tomorrow in south central won't be a whole lot warmer than today thanks to additional rainfall moving in. 52 in Kodiak. Southeast looking at temps in the lower 60s for most areas. Juneau about 61. Ketchikan near 62. The Alaska Peninsula in the 40s and 50s. The Chain generally below 50 degrees tomorrow. 42 in St. Paul. Bethel at 54, 42 in Nunivak Island, St. Lawrence Island 38, Nome looking at 51 with Norton Sound temperatures also in the lower 50s. The interior will be a lot closer to 70 degrees, if not warmer than that. And that combined with moisture, combined with the disturbance, sets the stage for a better chance of those thunderstorms we saw on the map just a few moments ago. 30s and 40s across the Brooks Range and the Arctic coast. Looks like a milder day for you with a few more areas of sunshine across the Arctic coast, including Barrow, Kaktovik, Wainwright, Prudhoe Bay, and Dead Horse. Flying tomorrow, well, the interior is probably the best bet for better visibility, but you will see some reductions, especially in the morning across the Alaska Range. Some of that will ease during the day, as you see here, becoming MVFR rather than starting out at IFR in the day. IFR conditions are expected to continue throughout a large part of the day, though, outside of Prince William Sound and on the east and south side of the Kenai Peninsula all the way around to Yakutat, and some pockets there in the Gulf are expected to have pretty poor visibility as well. MVFR conditions will be approaching southeastern Alaska during the day and increasing over some of the inner waterways, especially in the north, across the Bering Sea coast and southwest, and IFR conditions are expected across the central and western chain, as well as some areas along the Beaufort and Chukchi Sea coast. Most of that stays just off of land. Here's your past conditions then. Showers and thunderstorms may develop in the afternoon for Anaktuvik. Otherwise, VFR conditions there, and for Adigan Pass, watch for convective development in the afternoon. IFR probably to start Lake Clark and Merrill Pass during the day, but we should see some improvements in visibility as the day goes on. Rainy Pass, expect IFR trending toward MVFR conditions there. Windy Pass, we expect to see a visual flight rule through most of the day, and we'll say that as well for Isabel Pass with the threat of convective weather, though, in the afternoon. Mentasta Pass, expect VFR heading for MVFR conditions. Tanita Pass, visual flight rule should continue through the day. And now for Portage Pass, IFR conditions probably in the morning, maybe lifting to MVFR. And for the western side, including the Cook Inlet region, we're talking about MVFR trending toward VFR conditions, so a little bit better visibility perhaps on the western side. Chilkoot and White Pass, we expect to see that turn over to MVFR conditions as the day goes on Friday. Freezing levels show that warm air is really holding over the Yukon, British Columbia, and parts of southeast, with freezing levels as high as 6,000 to 8,000 feet. Got a couple cool pockets here around the train and also around Cook Inlet, some of those as low as 4,000 feet. But the general trend is that cooler air pocket across the Bering Sea with levels as low as 2,000 to even 4,000 feet. Once you get over land, though, it's generally between 4,000 and 6,000 feet for Friday morning. Icing potential, most of this will be light to isolated moderate. Saw one area of light rime reported today. I believe it was in southeast, but that was about it. A few showers and thunderstorms across the interior. That, of course, implies the threat of icing. Below 10,000 and above 6,000 feet in the west, and about the same there around the Gulf. Out across the western chain, those levels could be as high as 12,000 feet and above 8,000 feet. Again, most of that light to isolated moderate. The jet stream shows our trough of low pressure that continues to control the weather across Alaska. With this large and predominant trough here, we're guiding in Pacific moisture into the Gulf of Alaska. And for right now, we've maintained that northwesterly flow below the jet stream level for southeast. That's kept things pretty dry there. But as that changes a little bit and this trough moves through, we'll allow that wetter weather to move into southeast. So watch for that change as we head into tomorrow. At 9,000 feet, a broad westerly flow sweeping across the northern parts of the interior and the Arctic coast. We've got our circulation here across the north and western Gulf, with wind speeds pretty light coming across the Alaska Range and the Wrangell St. Elias region, and westerlies coming across the central and eastern chain and the Alaska Peninsula, with more of a south and southeasterly flow at this level for southeastern Alaska. Wind speeds here a little bit higher, around 55 knots or so, and winds pretty much parallel to the chain out across of western Alaska. At 3,000 feet, you'll see the wind speeds picking up a little bit more across the Gulf, as high as 50 to maybe 55 knots in some areas. And again, here are those winds coming across the northern part of the Gulf, anywhere from 25 to maybe as high as 35 knots. So watch for some gales perhaps across the northern part of the Gulf and probably on the west side of the storm at the surface here. So winds are going to be coming up across the Gulf, especially for coastal areas as we get into Friday and probably the first part of Saturday. Winds are pretty light across the interior, more of a northerly flow coming down the west coast from the Bering Strait all the way down through Nunivak Island and the Pribilofs. That slows down as it gets closer to the chain. And then westerlies there as you get to the central and western parts of the island. More of a westerly flow across the Beaufort and Chukchi seacoast. That only at 10 to about 15 knots at 3,000 feet. So turbulence then generally below 10,000 feet. There's an opportunity for some speed issues here with that, especially across coastal areas, as I mentioned. And again, generally below 10,000 feet. That also includes most of Kodiak Island tomorrow. Around thunderstorms, of course, that is implied turbulence there for the interior and across the central and western areas of the chain, generally speaking below 9,000 feet. That's a look at your aviation forecast. I'll be back in just a few minutes with a look at your marine weather and a recap of the weather to come. Stay tuned.
Daystar Day 2014. Welcome to Stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dean Regas, outreach astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory. For nearly 40 years, Jack Horkheimer and now we have been encouraging you to celebrate Daystar Day. Get up before dawn and experience a great star rise over our Earth's horizon. A star so huge we could fit over 1.25 million Earths inside it.
It sounds simple enough, but few people ever pay close enough attention to ever really experience the rising of the only star we can see in the daytime, a star we call the Sun, a star we like to call our day star.
This year, we suggest you celebrate Daystar Day on the morning of the summer solstice, Saturday, June 21st. The timing is about perfect this year because the moment of the summer solstice is at 6:51 a.m. Eastern Time. It's a great way to start your weekend.
Now, I'll bet that some of you are thinking that we're talking about a sunrise and that you've seen thousands of them. But even though you may think you've seen thousands of sunrises, very few people have ever taken the time to completely experience what's happening all around them as the sun rises. Because sunrise involves a complex series of steps as night slowly turns into dawn and finally into day.
And if you follow our simple instructions, you'll be amazed at what you've missed because you'll experience one of the grandest events in nature, which most people ignore. To participate, here is all you have to do. Simply get up 15 minutes before twilight begins, while it's still dark out on the day you've chosen. And whether you live in the heart of a city or out in the country makes no difference because it's not the sun itself you're going to observe, but the effects of sunrise on everything around you, as your part of the world slowly turns from night into day.
It's better to be outside, but if not, just sit by an open window. Now for the rules, which are absolutely essential. No internet, no television, no doing your normal wake-up routine. All distractions must be eliminated.
Simply sit quietly, inside or outside, and when you see the sky slowly start to brighten, look, listen, and feel what happens all around you, because a sunrise is more than visual. Watch the delicate interplay of light, color, and shadow.
But also listen, and you'll hear the sounds of our world as its creatures are waking up. You'll feel the wind change, the temperature change, and much, much more.
If you do get out before dawn on the 21st, you'll surely notice two bright lights in the eastern sky. The upper one is the waning crescent moon, and the planet Venus is about 7 degrees lower. Look off to the left of Venus and you'll spot a tight little cluster of stars that sorta, kinda looks like a tiny little dipper.
It wasn't that long ago that we were enjoying these stars in the evening sky. Remember what they're called? That's right, the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters. On the morning of June 24th, Venus and the Pleiades will be joined by a thin crescent moon, giving us one of the most spectacular planet-moon scoochies of the summer. We're giving you advance warning, so be sure to get up in time to see it.
Another thing to look for while you're waiting for the sun to rise is the Big Dipper. Look north and you'll see the dipper low on the horizon at the bottom of its path around the North Star. This will only work for those of you who live far enough north. James and the other folks in Florida are just out of luck.
Keep track of all the subtle changes you notice and record your observations on paper or into a voice recorder. Then read or listen to your observations a few days later. Believe me, if you've never done this before, you'll be absolutely amazed at what a star rise over a small planet can do for you.
Of course, remember to never look directly at the sun at any time. Only observe the effects of the sunrise on the world around you. I truly think that you'll gain a whole different perspective of your place on this planet and our planet's place in the universe.
Happy Day Star Day, my friends, and keep looking up.
I wonder if I should invite the stargazers up here to Alaska to experience the summer solstice, which is, what, about a week away now? Boy, it's coming fast, and we won't say summer's over just yet, but it kind of seems like it's getting there, doesn't it? Here's a look at southeast. South and southwesterly flow coming into the southern parts of the coastal areas of southeast. They'll see seas around 5, 6, 7 feet. Those will come up during the day, 6 to 8 feet there across the southern coast south of Sitka. A south and southeasterly flow, 4 to 6, maybe even 8 feet in some cases there. And again, the wind's picking up here north and west of Yakutat during the day. Now for the inner waterways, 10 to 15 knots, 2 to 3 foot seas there, 20 knots from the north and west, 2 foot seas there across the southern inner waterways. As we get into Saturday, winds in all areas are coming up ever so slightly. For the Lynn Canal, the winds switch around to the south, 10 knots with a 3 foot sea. Southeasterlies there for the central and southern parts of the inner waterways, 20 knots with a 2 foot sea. On the coastal areas, you're looking at seas around 6 to 8 feet. An offshore flow there for Yakutat. South and southwesterly winds there continue for Saturday with 6 to 8 foot seas. Now for the south central area, more of a northeasterly flow coming down the Cook Inlet all the way through Shelikof Strait, 20 to 30 knots with 5 to 8 foot seas. West of the Barren Islands, you'll see those winds quickly switch from east to northeasterly winds. We've got an offshore flow coming from Kodiak, a westerly flow at 35 knots, and also easterlies up to 35 knots. Outside of Resurrection Bay and Prince William Sound. Inside Prince William Sound, you're looking at 15 knots with a 6 foot sea, so kind of a choppy day for any of the glacier cruises there. A west and southwesterly flow coming across Shelikof Strait and up Cook Inlet tomorrow, 10 to 15, even 20 knots there west of the Barrens. The westerlies then punch into the west and northern parts of the Gulf, around 20 knots with a 8 to 9 foot sea. A northerly flow outside of Prince William Sound, seas settling down inside Prince William Sound for Saturday. Still a little bit drippy there, but winds will be a little more variable throughout the day rather than a steady flow with a choppy sea. More of a westerly flow inside of Bristol Bay tomorrow, looking at 4 foot seas with a 35 knot wind, 20 knots there just a little bit further south with a 5 foot sea. South of the peninsula into the Pacific, you're looking at 9 to 12 foot seas with westerlies 20 to 25 knots south of Kodiak Island. By Saturday, westerlies continue inside of Bristol Bay, 5 foot seas there, northeasterlies a little bit further down the arm. More of a westerly flow there on the Pacific side, 15 to 20 knots with a 5 to 7 foot sea as we start up the weekend. As we get into Friday, the west and southwesterly flow across the west central chain, looking at 7 foot seas and 25 knots there. As you get into the central part of the chain, you're looking at the effects of a weak ridge here. A southwesterly flow for Adak and Atka with 5 foot seas, a west and northwesterly flow just west of Nikolsky with a 5 to 6 foot sea, and across Unalaska Dutch Harbor, you're looking at 5 to 7 foot seas on either side of the island. 20 knot winds are generally from the west. Once we get into Saturday, things change just a little bit. More of a north and westerly flow across Kiska and the Attu Island waters. 6 foot seas there, still under 20 knots. A south and westerly flow for the central chain, 15 to 20 knots or so with 5 to 6 foot seas on either side. Southwesterlies with smaller seas north of Unalaska and Nikolsky, 15 knots from the south and west, and a light westerly flow south of the chain with a 5 foot sea south of Nikolsky and Unalaska. So again, the wind's letting up a little bit as we head into Saturday. For the west coast on Friday, a north and northwesterly flow will be predominant across the YK, Nunivak Island, and the Pribilofs. 20 knots there with a 4-foot sea, about the same there in the Kuskokwim Bay area. Northerlies coming across St. Lawrence Island with a 5-foot sea, and 4-foot seas for the St. Matthew Island waters, only 15 knots there. Saturday, very little change. One shift you'll see there around the Pribilofs, more of a southeasterly flow at 10 knots with a 3-foot sea. Otherwise, that north and northwesterly flow continues between 15 and 25 knots with 3-foot seas north of Nunivak Island, but 6-foot seas around St. Lawrence Island. Again, in all these areas, of course, ice-free, and we're seeing more and more ice-free waters across the Chukchi Sea. 2, 3, 5-foot seas there across the Chukchi Sea coast from Point Lay to Point Hope into the areas outside of Kotzebue Sound. 5-foot seas there with the northerly flow up to 25 knots. Otherwise, westerlies only at 10 knots over the ice. You'll look at more of a northeasterly flow coming into Kaktovik, Prudhoe Bay, and Dead Horse. That becomes more easterly at 10 knots on Saturday. And then west of that, you're looking at northerlies 15 to 20, even 25 knots coming down the Chukchi Sea coast, with seas coming up from 3 to 4, even 5-foot seas around the Kotzebue Sound region. Again, as we start up the weekend there on Saturday for the North Slope. Let's recap tonight's weather. Low pressure is strengthening as it moves across the North Pacific waters south of the Alaska Peninsula. As it moves into position just south of Kodiak Island tonight, it will strengthen to about 997 millibars. That's going to latch onto the Pacific moisture and spread another round of rain from south to north. The process has already started this afternoon, and it will continue marching northward toward the Anchorage Bowl and the Matanuska-Susitna valleys, and eventually allow some moisture into the interior for the production of thunderstorms tomorrow. A ridge of high pressure is moving out of the way and weakening for southeast. Your warm and cloud-free, somewhat days across southeast are coming to an end as rain moves your way tomorrow and again into Saturday. Out across the western Bering, low pressure is dropping southward from the Gulf of Anadyr. That's at about 1,007 millibars, and we'll focus on the central and western part of the chain as we go through the next couple days. Areas of light rain showers across the Arctic coast, and rain continues across the Norton Sound and the YK as we head into tomorrow. There's a better chance of thunderstorms mainly north of the Alaska Range tomorrow. You'll still see some activity across the Yukon, of course, as low pressure slowly moves from southeast to north and west. Look for more clouds than rainfall across the interior and northward. Showers continue across the Seward Peninsula and Nome, and light rain in some areas of lower visibility across the Alaska Peninsula and parts of Bristol Bay. As low pressure continues moving into the northern Gulf, winds will pick up along coastal areas, and rain will start to spread into southeast throughout the day. Look for improving visibilities across some of the western Alaska passes, though, as we get into the afternoon after starting out with the morning, likely at IFR conditions. Saturday, look for scattered showers and storms across the interior, many of those moving onward as we head into Sunday, it looks like, and low pressure continues its slow trek from west to east across the southern Bering Sea, with rain subsiding in the west coast. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and thanks for watching Alaska Weather.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.